I know some of those images are really hard to watch, and especially first thing in the morning when we're having breakfast and we're watching her scavenging and talking about the food there. But actually, these are good news stories. These are good stories. And I guess it's not until we see what actually happens in the life of someone in Anna's situation and that there is a way out and they are able to work their way out, we can see it as a positive thing. So firstly, happy International Women's Day 2012. International Women's Day has been celebrated for the last 101 years, so last year was the big year to celebrate. But I think in Australia, I just want to really stop and recognise how far we've come, and even just in my adult life, I can't believe how far women have come in Australia. It's amazing. You'd be aware, we have a female Governor General, we have a female Prime Minister, we have a female New South Wales Governor, we have many female ministers now that when I was young we probably weren't represented in that way, and we have a local female mayor, so we can be very proud of the influence that we have in our society and the reach we have and the voice that we have and the choices we have. I mean, I think now, 2012, I look at my daughter Imogen's age, she's 19, almost 20, and I just think about the choices in her life, the choices she has at university that weren't there. And I just think we really we've come such a long way. So I think really today for us here, it's about Thanksgiving. It's about actually saying, hey, what have we got? We have to be thankful for what we've got. In fact, I don't think we ever sit back and think about it, but we're very much an elite, and not because we live in Northside or in Mosman or whatever. If we have a fridge or a washing machine or a bed, we're an elite, because really there's a lot of, the majority of people in the world don't have those things. So I think today we're just, we're celebrating being women in 2012 in this amazing country, and we're also looking outside. Last weekend, Imogen was in at the Opera House for a series of talks on feminism, and when she came home, I said, so what really stood out for you? I was really interested to know what that was about. And she said, well, I heard Naomi Wolf and I really enjoyed hearing what she had to say. I said, well, what was it? Well, she said, one of the things that stood out is that we've done incredible things in Western feminism, and there's been such a focus on there, got such change, but we really haven't finished the job. The job's not done. And that really resonated with me, because I know there's so many of our sisters just not sharing in the freedom we have. So I thought I'd just do a little snapshot of where most of the world, the women in the world, are today. If we say there's approximately 2 billion people in the world living on less than $2 a day, 70% of those women are women. 70% of people living on less than $2 a day would be women. We're still doing 2/3 of the work. We're producing 50% of the food. We earn 10% of the income. 1% of the property is owned by women. So on that scorecard, we're not looking so good all of a sudden. I heard an expression, and many of you may have heard this, it's that women hold up half the sky. And there's a book that's been a bestseller called Half the Sky that a lot of people have been reading recently. And actually, I've read recently that expression came from Chairman Mao after a very brutal revolution, and I didn't know that. And one of the outcomes of that revolution was that women were emancipated. But I actually think that Chairman Mao got it completely wrong, because I think when you look at the figures that I've just told you, we hold up 3/4 of the sky as women. We live in a world where there are countries where girls just aren't wanted anymore. So in India last year, 3 to 5 million female fetuses were aborted. We live in a world where the rape of women and girls is still one of the best weapons of war that they're employing. And there's a group of us here who've been doing some work in northern Uganda with the war brides, and it is a very real weapon of war, and the results are just devastating. So it's not so different to when I was growing up. These wars were going on, this abuse was going on, it was all going on. But the difference is that we didn't get to hear about it. And now it's instant. There's this Joseph Kony email that's going around, and in the space of 2 days, 4.7 million people have viewed it. They said, we want to send this round and we want 500,000 people to see it so that we can go to the US government and they can lobby and we can just catch this guy, Joseph Kony, in northern Uganda. And 4.7 million people have seen it just in a couple of days. And that's the world we're living in. But when I was growing up in the 70s, it was in the Gough Whitlam era. And that was a time that, there were quite a few of us who had an education courtesy of Gough Whitlam's era, thank you, at university. But at that time, there was a big push to build ties with our neighbours in Indonesia. And so here I was growing up in, rural Wagga Wagga, and my parents decided that because I was learning Indonesian that we should all pack off to Indonesia, and I was 12, and off we went. And it was a little bit of a shock for a 12-year-old coming from country New South Wales, and to meet these kids who are younger than me and were on the beaches selling things, or they seemed to not have homes, they seemed not to be in school, and they didn't have shoes, and I'm thinking, where are their parents? And this was a bit of an eye-opener to me, and I guess I felt guilty about what I had, but I actually appreciated what I had a lot more after that trip. So if you jump forward to 1996, when we went back as a family, and we had the 3 children, 4, 7, 9 at that point. And by this time we'd had some connection with opportunity, and we had an understanding that poverty wasn't just this hopeless thing that would always, we just ignore those people. We went with opportunity into communities this was in Denpasar actually, which, you don't see those parts of Bali when you go there as a tourist, I can tell you. But we went into Denpasar, and we went into the homes of clients, and we got to see them just sitting on the concrete, chopping the chicken on the concrete to make their satays that they were taking out. This family had received a small loan, they'd made a card, they were selling 1,200 of these satays around the streets every day. They'd actually had a second loan, a third loan, they were bringing family members in, and they had quite an enterprise going. And so my impression at that time was, wow, this isn't about charity, it's not about grants, it's not about handouts, it's about enterprise, it's about bringing out the best in people and just giving them something to work with. And so that was a real turning point in my life. And really I haven't, life hasn't been the same since that point. If you can have an epiphany on something, it's that I don't have to solve the question of poverty, but I can come alongside amazing people and I can really make a difference by just helping them up. So we had the great fortune then of sort of learning and being mentored by this fellow called David Dispelling, who through the 70s was experimenting. He was a businessman and entrepreneur himself, and he moved to Bali and he started working with local people and, helping them think about ideas for businesses and what they could do and financing those. And so we were able to actually start to look at poverty differently and look at solutions to poverty differently. And he was very strong on using the marketplace and using what people had and finding local solutions. And the other thing I saw about David, and I think Andrew and I, my husband and I, really saw someone who was willing to make huge risks on behalf of other people. And we hadn't encountered someone making those kind of risks necessarily for the poor. And so he had moved to Bali, he'd given up his business, he'd decided that his whole life was going to be about this work. And so that was a great example to us. I mean, I can't say that we've taken the same route, but he's been an amazing role model to us. twice now I've had this incredible privilege of being in India for International Women's Day. And I can tell you, it's just, Karen's smiling because she was there for this and she can relate to this as well, because it's just an enduring image. If you can imagine 8,000 Indian women pouring into a stadium in their beautiful saris of orange and pink and blues and in little groups of colour, because they were a little community group that they'd come together on a bus, and they were so excited and they were chattering and they were just so happy to be there, and we were so happy to be with them. It was an extraordinary thing. And each of those women had received a small loan, and each of them, it might have only been a $50 loan, but they had actually had their own little business in their community. So they were just like this beautiful flock of colourful birds. That's the only way I can think about it, just this massive colour. But it wasn't really until we visited their homes the next day and we sat down with them that we just had a sense of why this was such a big deal, why this day was so important to them, that they could come and they could learn other skills and meet other women. And when we talked to them, a lot of them were young. They might have been 14-year-old girls who'd been married for 2 years, and life for them was just working in the home or working in a little business, or it was just looking after people. So often they were abused. The mother-in-law may have herself been abused, so of course when someone comes along, they're the one that gets abused. And so that's why for one day they felt valued. They could come and they were honoured, they were valued, and it was exciting for us because we could see that they were overcoming those statistics. That's what they were doing. They were overcoming, and it was a very exciting time. So that's International Women's Day in my memory from India. So there's the slogan and opportunity, or the words we're working around this year are empower a woman, empower a nation, which is, I guess, another way of saying, inspiring girls as well. It's very much what we've done. It's our experience that when you get women all moving together, they can do an awful lot. There are some misconceptions about people in poverty that I'd just like to touch on briefly. And one is, I've heard all these across the years, that somehow they deserve it. But the reality is that most poverty is caused by corruption and greed and natural disasters, because people in poverty don't have the best spots. If there's going to be a landslide, you can be sure that it's the poorest of the poor who are under that, in that position, and they're always the worst off. Another is that they're lazy, and I've heard that from people in their own country tell me that, and I go, well, that's not what I've seen. I've seen women getting up at 3 in the morning, going to the markets, coming back, sitting for 12 hours with their children at their feet, and coughing, tuberculosis, and they're sitting in the rain. Laziness is not the cause of poverty. And the other thing I've sometimes heard is, they don't feel it the way we do. And, I've heard that, there's a perception that, no, somehow, there's certainly a fatalism and a lower expectation, I think, that women in dire situations have, and they have to be patient. But they love their children as much as we do. It's just that they don't have choice. They don't have choice. So what does opportunity see in people? We see amazing entrepreneurs. We see very clever people. We see people who are generous and community-minded. Just as in Mosman, I'm seeing all this incredible community that you're building here, and they build that too, and they love that. And they're resourceful. We've got a community of people in the Philippines, in Manila, who've built all their houses in a graveyard because that's where they had to be. It was the only land they could get, so they've built these wonderful, and they've been resourceful, and they're running businesses in these situations. What's happened is they've just been locked out. They've been locked out of financial services that we just take for granted and we use every day, and there's no fallback. And so, I think in Australia we've been through a GFC, and for some people it's been very tough, and sometimes we can fall back on grandparents for school fees or to help out or just help us along. But most of these people, there's no fallback. The parents are probably poorer than they are. So having access to loans and saving, insurance is a big one. You know, if they lose a family member, there's life insurance. If they lose their crops or their cow, having insurance is just totally life-changing for them. I mean, we can access all of those things, but it can change their lives. It's incredible. And technology that is very exciting for people in poverty. The technology, to be able to get on a mobile phone and find out what the price is of the market so that the middleman can't rip you off, or to secure a sale via mobile phone, or to transfer money around, or to go to an ATM and get a loan out, you know, or pay it back or something like that, is just extraordinary. And to be able to use fingerprint technology to secure finance as well. So I'll just tell you about a woman called Anita that I met in 1999, because I had these people that I've met along the way that just really stand out. And Anita, I remember her, we were filming in Quezon City in Manila, and we were there for 2 weeks in this community filming. And Anita was around, and she was this radiant, smiling woman. I just remember her face so well, even though it's about 13 years ago. And so we had time to talk over these 2 weeks, and we talked about her business and her life and her kids, and she had a sewing business. And she'd done very well. She worked very hard. And so I started asking her about her kids, and what are your kids doing? She said, well, I've got one who's a professor in an American university. I've got one who's a professor in a Filipino university. And the other two were both professionals. And she had done that in that business. She'd been able to put those 4 kids through tertiary studies, right through. And so I said, well, do you think are you going to go now? You've got your family out there, you can go and live very comfortably with them. She said, oh no, I haven't finished here. And she was setting up all these other little businesses for other women. So she was employing, I think, 6 young girls there, but she was actually setting them up in their own business as well. And it just is such a great example of the generosity of people that are themselves poor, but they just have this extraordinary generosity. And also the confidence. She was confident that she could just go. She could take risks on other people now. Just one other little thing, a story that I heard that I really love is about a loan officer talking, to a woman, and this person was watching this loan officer stand there with the woman going, berating him, and he was standing there with a smile on his face, and this person said, well, why were you standing there smiling? Because she looked pretty angry at you. I don't know, it seemed like an odd reaction. And he said, oh, look, when I met her, she would only look at my feet. She was like this. She would only look at her feet. And I watched her demeanour change over the time that we've been working together. And now, the fact that she can stand and point her finger at me, look me in the eye and tell me what she wants, so I'm really happy about it. So Anita's working on a small scale, but actually as women, I think as women we're just such change agents. We can actually change the fabric of our society when we set our mind to it, when we step out and we take a risk. I've been reading about a woman called Ellen Johnson Sirleaf from Liberia. She's the first elected president of Liberia, and she's a very impressive woman. She's just won a Nobel Peace Prize with 2 other women for leading a non-violent struggle for women's rights. So she's the sort of woman that Naomi Wolf is, alluding to. We haven't got the job done yet, but there are women out there doing the big nation-building structural stuff, and there are women like Anita doing the community-based in there with her own people sort of work. So I'm not one of those fearless people. I mean, my background's in journalism, and I chose financial journalism so I didn't have to chase ambulances, essentially, because I didn't think my stomach would take it. So I'm not one of those fearless people that races off to war zones and would think that was particularly exciting. But in my 17 years with Opportunity, I've sometimes been asked to do things that I thought, this doesn't feel really comfortable, but I knew I had to do it. So just straight after the Bali bombings, they asked me to go up to Bali, just when all the coroners and the coffins and things were going in on the planes, and I was up there, and also after Aceh, after the tsunami there, they said, would I go up? And my mother wasn't very happy about it at all. But I guess it's one of the things I've come to realise, that actually it's not until you step out and you take those kind of risks that you really can achieve your potential. And for me, that was actually finding that I could be a voice on behalf of those people that didn't have the voice, that there was a place for me as a journalist, as a bridge, and that was a purpose to go. But in that place, that's when I just learned so much about my own capabilities and talents I didn't know I had and I had to use. And so I guess I just, I think probably the bigger risk is not stepping out. The bigger risk is not stepping into those places. It doesn't have to be doing enormous things like, the president of Liberia, but it can just be small things. So I guess that's the point I would leave you with today, really, is that's, just to get out there and take those risks. If an opportunity comes up for you to do something that maybe, I don't know that I wanted to do that, but that just to do it. Because if opportunity hadn't taken a risk on Anita, and Anita hadn't taken that risk to set up a little business that she probably didn't have the confidence to set up, then she wouldn't have been able to put her children through school. And then she wouldn't have been able to help these other women. And so that's what happens when you take a risk. And if David so hadn't taken a risk, there's millions and millions of people in poverty that would not have had that opportunity. So that's the message I'd like to leave with you today. And I guess I'd like to challenge you that today we've very kindly had our breakfast sponsored, and today we can be a force for change as a group of women. I think there's 100 of us here. It's $100 to make a loan to take a woman out of poverty, and if we all decided that, okay, I'll put what I would have spent on breakfast towards opportunity, then we could probably take 20 families out of poverty at least. And so I just encourage you to do that. If you feel that you'd like to do that, that would be a great support. And also just, I'd also encourage you to get involved. I mean, if you're out there and you've got lots of energy and you're just thinking, I really want to give back, I'm at a stage of life where my kids are, pretty much independent, and I really feel that I've got a lot to give, then please come and talk to us. And talk to, this is Sarah Marino, who I probably should have introduced, and she's with Opportunity International, and you can come and you can talk to Sarah. Also, if you have, I've got pledge forms there, if you'd like to fill those in, if you feel that you'd like to, or just go onto our website, which is also on there. And so I'd really just love to thank you for coming today, and thank you for your support of Opportunity.